All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's Anchor Team. I'm your host, Michael Hitchborn, and with me is the indomitable Jim Mon.
I am here.
He is here. So tonight's the mailbag. We're just going to reach into the mailbag and talk to you guys about a bunch of stuff that you want to talk about. But before we do, we're going to go ahead and say our rosary beforehand, and this time we're going to say it a little bit slower. It was requested of us to say it slower as the Latin is coming back to some of our community members. So we're going to slow down the Latin just a little bit so that all of you can keep up. All right. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancte Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostri. Amen.
Our Lady of Victory.
Pray for us.
In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. All right.
We slowed that down.
There we go. So, excuse me. I don't know what I think the pollen is getting to me. I'm starting to lose my voice in the evenings now, which is kind of a pain in the back end, but you know, we'll deal with it. Okay. So a couple things just to kind of catch you up on where things stand and where we are with stuff before we go into the questions. First of all, our report has been published. Our report on the on Caritas Internationalis, it's getting quite a bit of attention, and I can't tell you too much right now, but what I can say is that the report on Caritas and the World Social Forum is currently in the hands of a prominent clergyman who you all probably would recognize, and I am told that he is preparing a public statement on it. So hopefully sometime in the near future, we will be seeing a statement based on that particular report, which I think would be very big news. So there's that. The next thing I want to tell you is that we are currently working on our next series of reports based on the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. Of course, the collection is coming up this November. And because of the amount of research that goes into each of these grantees, it's going to be pretty much all I focus on until the collection is done. But it didn't take long. We started researching some of the grantees, and right off the bat, we found one that was just deep into the weeds with promoting communism. I mean, these people are practically members of the Democratic Socialists of America. So anyway, so that's going to be fun. I actually really enjoy doing the CCHD research. It's easy for me. It's one of those, low risk, high reward kind of things. You just start flipping through the organization and seeing who they're affiliated with or what they're doing, and usually find something pretty quickly. And then you just bear down on it and you start finding all kinds of stuff, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to putting those reports out. And one thing that we want to talk about, or at least we're going to let you know about, is a bit of news that is worth noting. And that is that the Anglican Bishop of Rochester is converting, or has converted, to Catholicism. Now, Jim actually dug up the story and he has a few other details. I haven't spent a whole lot of time looking into this because I've been dealing with a whole bunch of stuff this week, but that's a whole other story. So Jim is the one that found the story and he was telling me about it. So I'm going to let Jim cover that.
Yeah, real quick. Hang on a second there, Hitch. Good to see everybody, by the way. I love these Friday nights. So there's not much to it, but except for the fact that this guy is highly revered. And he was originally from Pakistan, was Muslim, and then had converted to the Anglican Communion. And very much like a lot of historical figures like Cardinal Newman, and I think Knox is the other one, it's really a cause for great celebration, and somebody like this of that high in magnitude. And his basic point was the same reason any other Protestant clergyman basically converts over to Catholicism, is that he had no other choice upon reading this information and really coming to terms with it. So the other point about this guy was after 9/11, he spoke very boldly against Islam, and he was a guy who was originally Islamic. And the sad part of this whole story was, but we do not, and this is really important, we do not have corroboration on this. And there was, I think it was Robert Royal from EWTN had reported that there were many reports that Pope Francis tried to talk him out of it, that he was already a Christian. Now, again, we don't have any substantive proof on that, but I thought it was worth mentioning because if that in fact were the case, that would be absolutely horrendous. I don't even know what to say about that. So,
what can we say? I mean,
yeah,
honestly,
I just even know that's so sad.
Well, I mean, you have to wonder what exactly is the Pope's purpose at this point.
Yes.
If he's not trying to draw souls to Christ, if he's not trying to bring people into the fullness of the faith,
what's he doing?
What is he doing? And why is he Pope? I mean,
right.
what really and ultimately is your goal here then? And I think a lot of it actually, it all goes back to Fratelli Tutti and a lot of the Masonic stuff that we've been seeing covered around here. And that's that either he doesn't believe or he does and he hates it. Those are the only two possibilities. Either he believes in the church and he believes in the fullness of the church and he hates it, or he doesn't believe it at all. I can't deal with that.
Yeah, we can only speculate, but look, he has come out and said that there really were under no mandate to convert anyone, and particularly the Jews, which we were told about many times. And I don't know what to say to that. So I think this is a great cause for celebration. And actually, if in fact that were to come out true, that's a very sad day. Beyond sad. I don't even know. I can't find a word for it.
So, you hear these things, and right now, as Jim pointed out, it's only a rumor. But if the Archbishop or if the bishop does come out and reveal that yes, Pope Francis did try to dissuade him from joining the Catholic faith, saying that, well, you're already a Christian, it would just confirm everything that we've already been seeing anyway. So it wouldn't surprise me in the least. It would definitely be sad and a huge scandal, but it wouldn't shock me at all. Anyway,
it's funny, Hitch. One last point where caught my attention was Robert Royal from EWTN. I think when he's not one for alarmism.
No, he really isn't.
So when he says something, I do tend to take notice. And the way he presented that, I went, "Oh no."
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yeah, and the other thing is that Robert Royal has his ear to the ground and he knows people.
Yes, he does.
And so if he's getting information that indicates that Pope Francis tried to say, hey, you don't need to become Catholic, it's not really a necessary thing. If he did that, or if Robert Royal is reporting it, I tend to believe that actually happened.
Right.
So it's
I hate to say it, but
yeah,
that's my take on it.
So there's actually something else that I'll go ahead and bring up, and this is kind of interesting. Let me find the statement. Katholisch. I'm going to butcher the German, but it's KATHOLISCHES.info. It's a German website that reports things that are going on in the church, primarily from a Germanic or a European perspective. So they hear a lot of things. They report on a lot of things that are going on in the church in Europe. And they had an interesting article that they just put up today. And the headline, let me pull up the headline because it's in German. I want to translate it into English because it's, I'll butcher it otherwise. Where? Thought I had the article up, maybe not. Well, anyway, the basic gist of the article was that Pope Francis is looking to announce more cardinals this weekend, and that when he does, we might possibly see Father James Martin S.J. on the list.
Yeah.
Boy. Yeah. So as I said to some friends this afternoon, I can just see him now twirling around his red cassock, singing, "I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty," and well, you know the rest.
Very good, by the way.
Yeah.
That was excellent.
So,
Actually, that was perfect.
yeah, you can't make this stuff up. It's
No, no, you can't.
after a while,
No.
it becomes so absurd. And
Yes.
everything is reduced to the absurd. I mean, it's crazy that the Babylon Bee at this point isn't even satire anymore because they're reporting things that are coming true. I mean, I don't even know how to handle news that is so ridiculous and so over the top absurd. I mean, for crying out loud, you know what Pope Francis said recently, don't you?
Oh, no,
He
what?
said, yeah, he was talking about this synod on synodality, and he was, oh, what was it? It was reported by my friend over at Restore the Faith or Return to Tradition, one of the two. I think it's.
Oh yeah, right.
What was the? No, not that. Rats. I had it open and I closed it because my computer was being overtaxed by too many tabs being open. But the Pope Francis said something, and I wish I could. You know what? Talk for a minute, Jim. I'm going to see if I can find it.
I can do that.
Yeah, I know you can.
Anyway, what is this? By the way, you guys, wanted to tell you, thank you all for writing in questions. We went through all of them. We're going to try to hit them tonight. And a few of you hit us like I saw them on my email at about 2 minutes to 6 o'clock. But the questions were very well thought out. Everything from state of incontism to, a lot of people had asked about the synod for synodality. Joanne O'Byrne asked. So we're going to try to get to most of these tonight, and a lot of them overlapped. So this should be pretty cool. And one of the things which I thought I really want to go over, and maybe even Hitch is looking for this, I'm not sure, but one of the things I thought was kind of interesting was the Pope had come out and said that there are 3 areas we should employ incredible vigilance to make sure: formalism, intellectualism, and complacency. Now, we'll go into those later, but when you go through it, I watched some analysis on this, and I was thinking about it. I'm really looking forward to that because it's so bad that because he actually explained each one of these 3, and it just got worse. So other than that, we have some pretty cool questions, and we're looking to sort of hitting this. But let's see what else is going down. And somebody has to slow down the Ave Maria. We got that one. And what else? Any luck, Hitch?
Almost. I'm trying to find there. He fortunately he puts all the quotes up on the screen as he's reading them, and there's one that I'm looking for that really struck me, and I just want to find it real quick.
But so a couple of things too is like what's been going down. One of the things I want to hit to. It's been such an amazing week between. First of all, if Jimmy Martin gets put in that position, I don't even know what to say to that. That is so egregious and conspicuously bad. I literally would be speechless. But we all watched the Pelosi thing with great interest. I think a bunch of us did. I found that particularly interesting.
Here it is. I found it.
Hit it.
So at the opening of the synodal process of the Synod on Synodality, it's what a mess of a name, Pope Francis says, quote, "The Spirit asks us to listen to the world, to the challenges and changes that it sets before us. Let us not soundproof our hearts. Let us not remain barricaded in our certainties." Are you kidding me?
Barricaded in our certainties. Isn't his job to defend the deposit of faith?
Yes, it's literally your job. It's literally your job. That's what you were supposed to be doing. So first of all, he doesn't say the Holy Spirit. He says
the Spirit.
The Spirit. So what spirit are they talking about?
I'm afraid to ask.
Yeah, the spirit of the age, I think. But he says the Spirit asks us to listen to the world. Wait a minute. Never in the history of the entire church, from Adam and Eve all the way till now, has God ever said to listen to the world. In fact,
no.
Jesus consistently says, reject the world. Do not listen to the world. You are separated from the world. I have taken you out of the world.
Right.
We're not supposed to be part of the world. We're in it, but we're not supposed to be part of it. The world has nothing to offer us. Nothing. We're in
Right.
exile here. That's about as far as it goes. So for him to say, no, we're supposed to listen to the world, that's garbage.
Yes.
It's absolute garbage. And then he goes on to the challenges and changes that it sets before us. Wait a minute. First of all, the world, the challenges that the world presents to us are the things that are counter to the church, because the world wants to draw us into the world and away from the church. And our Lord said very clearly, if the world loves you, it's because the world loves its own.
Yes. Right.
We're not
Right.
supposed to be with it. If the world hates you, it hates you because of Christ. So the world hates Christ. The world loves its own. Those are the two lessons about the world that we need to know. We don't need to know anything else. So then he says, let us not soundproof our hearts. In other words, don't let your hearts be deaf to what the world wants to talk to you about, or the devil, or whoever. Let us not remain barricaded in our certainties. And right there, I mean, barricaded in our certainties. So if the world starts saying, did Jesus really die on the cross? Did
Yes.
Jesus really rise from the... Are we supposed to let them talk to us about that? Are we supposed to open our hearts to that? No, not ever. Not ever. I mean, this man is not only abdicating, he's turncoated. He is actually advocating for the world from the pulpit of the church. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. So, you know, I wanted to share that with you because every single time I saw that quote, I got madder and madder, and I just wanted to, I wanted to pull my hair out. But the fact of the matter is that this man is leading people right out of the church, and he's doing it deliberately. And going back to the bishop of Rochester,
Yes.
it seems very likely to me, if this is his disposition, seems very likely to me that he would have said, you don't have to convert. Just stay where you are. Are you kidding me?
Right. Right.
Does he have any fear of God at all?
That's a great question.
I don't know, but
what conclusion can you draw? I mean, what other conclusion can you draw? He certainly, by his actions and what he's saying, I mean, we could spend the entire weekend going over just his homily at the beginning of the synod. I mean, right?
Right. So, you know, there are very few conclusions we can draw about his person.
Yes.
But we can draw all kinds of conclusions about what he's saying.
Absolutely.
And we can condemn them too. We can condemn what he says. We can condemn what he does. We can't condemn him. We can't place judgment upon him and say, well, he is an apostate. You know, we can say that his words are heretical, but we can't call him a heretic. See the difference?
Yes, exactly.
So, you know, we can conclude certain things, but we can't conclude others. And those things that we can't conclude, such as he's an apostate, he's a heretic, he's not the Pope, whatever. Those things we have to set aside. What we can do, though, is look at what he says, look at what he does, and we can judge those actions and words for themselves. And we can say, this is wrong, this is sinful. We can even say it's sinful. We don't necessarily say he sinned.
Sure.
We can say what he said, what he did was sinful.
Hitch, so, I asked Father Altman that. Don't we have a responsibility to speak up?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I think this is one of the things that that particularly good faithful Catholics really get wrong. Like you're supposed to be a blind sheep. No, quite the opposite. You're supposed to stand up and go, "This is insane." Okay, right. We're not judging the Pope. What we're saying is the Holy Father is saying things that are clearly heretical, and here's why.
Right.
You know. So anyway, go ahead.
So anyway, I just wanted to bring those things up because I thought that they were very apropos and they're very timely because it just happened. Excuse me. But so anyway, I don't want my head to explode. So let's jump into the mailbag.
I don't want my head to explode.
Yeah.
So we'll go to
So
the mailbag. You want to start with Joanne Burns' question? I believe we had
actually, I'm going to start with Jack.
Okay, cool.
So question 1 comes from Jack. And he says, I think it might be timely to bring up the troubling issue of sedevacantism. Is the church really in eclipse, as was prophesied and foretold in Fatima, Third Secret? Can a horrific public habitual heretic really be a valid pope? Are we witnessing the end result of what Belladad testified to before U.S. federal Congress? Now, technically, those are 3 questions, not one.
Yes.
But let's start with the first one. He says, I think it's time to bring up the troubling issue of sedevacantism. Now, sedevacantism, it's an ism. So we'll set the ism part aside for a moment. Sedevacante, all it means is that the seat is empty.
Right.
So every time there is the death of a pope, we have sedevacante. We have a moment where the pope is not sitting in the chair of Peter. It is empty. And so a new one needs to be elected. When it comes to the validity of the popes, the succession of the line of Peter, from Peter all the way through Pius X, through Pius XII, through John the 23rd, Paul the 6th, John Paul the 1st, John Paul the 2nd, all of those elections were valid. They were valid. Okay, there's no reason to believe that they were not valid. And speculation about things that may have occurred within the conclaves it's just that. It's speculation. There's zero proof, zero confirmed evidence, especially from those who were in the conclaves. Not one of them has ever come out and said, actually, John Paul I wasn't actually elected. It was this other guy. And I don't know why he's sitting on the throne because this other guy actually got elected. That never happened. That's never happened. There's never been a contradiction to the conclaves. So we have to conclude that the conclaves themselves were all valid. John the 23rd was valid. Paul the 6th was valid. John Paul I, John Paul II, Benedict the 16th. The only one that we can have a dubia about, and I think that it's fair to have a dubia about it, is Pope Francis. And the reason that we can have a dubia about it is not because of the question of whether he was validly elected at the conclave, but whether the conclave could have been validly held because of a question regarding whether Benedict properly abdicated the throne. I can't conclude one way or another. Neither can Jim, neither can any of you, neither can anybody else currently in the church. What we can say is that we have questions. And we have questions because there is evidence that Pope Benedict may have tried to actually just abdicate a portion of the papacy without trying to abdicate the full thing, which is extremely problematic and troublesome. Because what that would mean is that if he did not properly abdicate, if he actually abdicated just the ministry of the papacy, which is what he said in his speech, as opposed to the office of the ministry, which is what's required by canon law, then the question is, did he actually abdicate? Because he can't split the papacy. It would be like the president of the United States saying, well, I abdicate the active ministry of the presidency, but I'm still president.
No.
It doesn't work. You're either president or you're not. You're either the Pope or you're not. So there's a question about that. For Francis, it could have been anybody. It could have been Cardinal Burke who was elected. We would still have a question simply because of the way that Pope Benedict abdicated and the fact that he's still holding all the trappings of the papacy. It's confusing.
Right.
So we can have a question about it. We can have a dubia about it. And I think it's healthy to.
Can I ask you a question, Hitch? Even you and I were talking earlier. Now, there have been popes who have resigned their office, but every one of them historically has completely stepped down.
Right. Even to the point of renouncing their papal name.
Yes. And have taken their old, their old name back and gone back to actually, being a priest. Some of them.
priest, hermit,
Hermit,
like
right.
going into secluded life. So the fact of the matter is Pope Benedict did none of those things. He's still referred to as the Holy Father. So it's questionable. There's a reason for question. So it's very confusing. And I think it's healthy to ask those questions, because if you don't, if you look at it with a clear break and you say that, it's impossible for Benedict to still be the Pope, then you wind up like some people I've seen online, some prominent figures that I know in social media, I'm not going to name names, who are now having a weird cognitive dissonance about whether the church is actually the church now. So it's healthy to ask these questions, and it's healthy to keep it open as long as there's a dubia, because at least you can say that it is possible that this man is not the Pope, which would explain a great many things.
Yes.
So that's as far as I'll take it. I'm not going to take it any further. So the second part of his first question, is the church really in eclipse as was prophesied and foretold in the third secret of Fatima? Now, it wasn't Fatima that said that the church would be in eclipse. That was La Salette. So I just want to clarify that. Is the church in eclipse? I think it's pretty clear that it is. Can a horrific, public, habitual heretic really be a valid pope? Bellarmine says no. So, but if we were to go back to the example of King Saul, whom God rejected as king, Samuel told him, God has rejected you as king. You're no longer king. And the next day he went and he anointed David, which meant that David was the king. David was king, Saul was not. But what happened was Saul pleaded with Samuel to go down the mountain with him so that he could offer sacrifice with him, giving the impression to the people that he was still king. So he still maintained his presence on the throne. He maintained his kingly authority, at least in a temporal sense. And Samuel did not reveal his sin. David, who was anointed, who knew that he was the king, did not speak out and say that Saul was not the king. He knew he wasn't, but he didn't speak out and say that he wasn't. And if David would not speak out and say that Saul was no longer the king, well, then I would say that we don't have the authority to stand up and declare that someone who is sitting on the throne of Peter is not the Pope. We can back another one and we can say, I kind of stand with Benedict. I don't really want to stand over there with Bergoglio, with Pope Francis, because he's saying things that are kind of contrary to church teaching, and it's pretty messed up. And honestly, a lot of the things that he says are heretical. Well, then I'm going to stand with Benedict and stand with his teaching authority, and I'll stay with that. And you'll be safe. You'll be fine. But you can't make that declaration if Pope Benedict won't stand up and say he's not the Pope, and if King David won't stand up and say that King Saul's not the king, then we can't jump in front and make any declarative like that also. Okay, next question. Are we witnessing the end result of what Bella Dodd testified to before the U.S. Federal Congress? I think absolutely yes. And just to give a refresher, what did Bella Dodd testify to? She said that she was part of the Communist Party, one of her roles was to recruit young communist radicals to enter into the seminaries. And through that recruitment process, she saw many of them elevated to cardinal and bishop. So yes, I think that what we are seeing is definitely the end result of that. So there we go. I'm going to let Jim take question number 2 from Joanne.
You bet. So thanks, Hitch.
Mm-hmm.
Joanne O'Byrne. I would like to know what is going on at the Synod for Synodality in the Vatican. Also like to know any info on the Vatican's financial scandal and the sexual abuse scandal. Okay. The NAC, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of those are great questions. First, we're going to focus on the Synod of Synodality. So first things first, on October 10th, Pope Francis launched the Vatican II's synodal process on the Synod with a celebration of the Mass. Now, We're going to go through some of the quotes of the homily, and Hitch, jump in anytime.
Sure.
So this promised to be a crowd pleaser. Everything changes once we are capable of genuine encounters with Jesus and with one another, without formalism or pretense, or simply as we are.
Full stop.
Yes.
Full stop. Everything changes.
Yes, everything.
Once we're capable of genuine encounters with Jesus. So when you speak in absolutes like this, and this is part of the problem with Pope Francis, he speaks in absolutes on things that they don't make sense if you take them as absolutes.
Mm-hmm.
To say that everything changes is to say that even the church, even God himself, can change based upon our encounter with Christ. Yeah. Or that the precepts of the church can change based upon our encounter with Christ, or that morality itself can change based upon what he is calling an encounter with Christ. That doesn't happen. There are certain foundations. Our Lord said that he built his house on stone, on rock. And the fact that he built his house on rock, it won't fall, which means that it's immovable. It doesn't move. It's completely and totally fastened to the superstructure of the earth. It's not going to move. And then he says, so encounters with Jesus and with one another.
Oh yeah.
So
sure.
Things can change just by encountering other people. So what does that mean? People who are gay. You encounter someone who's gay, you learn about who they are, you get to know them a little bit, you have a couple of drinks with them, and you're kind of buddies with them. So now you can't really condemn them because of their homosexuality, right?
Right.
That's where he's going with this.
That's exactly right. And it's funny, Hitch, this is so Freemasonic, this entire thing. But, to your point, you go down this path and it would be, okay, there's lots of words thrown in here like compassion and, and understanding and really understanding people. Great. Okay. That's fantastic. We all want to do that. Okay. We all want to be charitable, but to be charitable and to really be compassionate is to put people on the right track. Okay. You don't help the alcoholic by feeding him booze.
Right. Exactly.
You just don't. What you do is, you put your arm around the guy and go, hey, you're kind of messing up. And here's why. And I love you. So here's why you're messing up. So, you really want to stop that. That's compassion. That's fellowship, right? This whole thing is marked by this very, very scary language of this democracy-driven agenda where we're going to throw out absolute truth and we're just going to kind of take the pulse of people. And it's really more important to let everybody in as opposed to defending the truth. It's insane.
Except he doesn't want to let people in if he's telling the Bishop of Rochester that he shouldn't convert. Right?
Yes.
All are welcome except for those who really want to be Catholic.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. Right.
Lisa Evers says that's what happens when you write in crayon.
The handbook. One guy speaking of that, one guy said the handbook. I forget who. Oh, it was Father Gerard, I think. And he's like, I don't know about that handbook. It was like, it looks like it was made for children or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he goes, he called it, he's like, it kind of reminded me of a coloring book. I don't mean to be disrespectful. And I go, no, you aren't being disrespectful.
That's basically what it was.
So you want to continue, Hitch? Here we go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, here we go. This is the time to look others in the eye and listen to what they have to say, to build rapport, to be sensitive, to the questions of our sisters and brothers. Francis said, next line, and then we'll stop. The quote, art of the encounter, said Francis, is marked by listening and seeking to understand the other. Every encounter, as we know, calls for openness, courage, and willingness to let ourselves be challenged by the presence of the stories of others. Okay, if I could first, let ourselves be challenged. That's a big part of it because, again, we're going to get to it in a few seconds, but you don't want to be rigid in your belief in sort of anything that the church has taught before, because that's the mark of someone who's not really serious about this.
Right.
It's nuts.
Yeah. So again, it goes back to what is the end goal? So if you understand the Hegelian dialectic.
Yes.
And I talked about this last week.
Right.
But the Hegelian dialectic is thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. Okay. Thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. They're trying to not go with one or the other extreme, but they want to come to a squishy conclusion in the middle. So if you take a Hindu who meets up with a Catholic and they have a conversation, and the Hindu's saying, "Oh, I believe in all kinds of gods who are going to help us to do all sorts of things, and then we are going to be reincarnated." And at the same time, the Catholic says, "Well, I believe in one God, and that there is we die, we are judged, and then we either go to heaven or hell for all eternity. There is no reincarnation,
Right.
but we will be reunited with our own bodies, not with some other sort of body." So you have this dialogue. Both sides are extremely opposed. They are diametrically opposed. They cannot be unified. There is no unity between those two sides. But by dialoguing, by having an encounter, what is he saying? He's saying every encounter, as we know, calls for openness. So now he's saying the Catholic has to be open to the possibility that the Hindu is right on some things. We have to have the courage to be willing to embrace certain ideologies of the Hindu. And we have to be willing to let ourselves be challenged by the presence in the stories of others. So if we feel uncomfortable with the fact that we might be open to some of the heresies and the false teachings of the Hindus, but it's something that he wants us to do and it makes us uncomfortable, but it's courageous for us to open ourselves up despite those reservations. Well, the reason you have inhibitions is so that you don't do something stupid. The reason that we have inhibitions with regard to ourselves so that we don't say something dumb or do something dumb. What happens when you go out and you drink? You lose those inhibitions. They are diminished. They say that wine loosens the tongue. Okay? If you lose those inhibitions and you then open yourself up to all kinds of things, and you're willing to do things that you normally would not do. And this is what Pope Francis is doing. He's trying to get you to lose your inhibitions so that you can embrace these false ideologies, so that he can have some sort of false integration of a false religion with the true faith. And it does not and can never work.
And he's wrapping it in virtue.
Yeah.
That's the scary part. And he's the pontiff.
Right.
He has enormous influence. And I just go, oh man, I got to read this next line because this is where it all comes down. And actually, I love this. And Hitch, you're going to love this. You're going to go off on this. I got this from the National Catholic Reporter. So, because I wanted to really make sure I got it. Yes. So anyway, from the National Catholic Reporter, after decades of continued financial and sexual scandals plaguing the church, Francis is betting that the synodal process, that of a participatory listening church, will involve a fuller involvement of all its members. Invite a fuller involvement of all its members and help purge its abuse of power. So all of the financial and sexual malfeasance, right, to speak to Bella Dodds, he's betting that the synodal process will make that all go away. Decades of sexual scandal to be purged by the synodal process. And presumably, by the way, fuller involvement of all the members is the answer. Effectively, the Pope is saying, or getting together and voting on sin.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is. We can fix this by having everyone fill out a questionnaire. We're all going to vote on what absolute truth is. It's nuts. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's smoke and mirrors. Actually, it's kind of I'm kind of insulted by it. I mean, anyone who is like looking at this. We've got all these decades and decades of sexual malfeasance of the clergy that have been swept under the rug by corporate shills. I'll call them.
Mm-hmm.
Really is what that is, and yet that's somehow the synodal process is going to fix that. No. What would fix that actually is orange jumpsuits and handcuffs. That would fix that.
Yep. Yeah, it sure would.
It's not a sin actually in the world. It's a felony.
You know what else would fix it?
What?
Purging the clergy of all the homosexuals.
Yes, precisely. After you lock them up, right? Which I don't want to forget.
National
about that.
Catholic Reporter, they're against that.
Oh, I just can't even. I mean,
they're dead set. I mean, there are so many Catholics that are out there that are completely and totally dead set against getting rid of homosexuals in the clergy. And they say, well, we want to fix the sexual problem, but at the same time, we don't want to get rid of the homosexuals. Well, wait a minute. Do you want to fix the sexual problem or not?
And again, it's worth pointing out it's not a pedophilia problem. Over 80%.
No, it's a perversion problem.
Yeah, it's a homosexual problem. It's not a pedophilia problem. 80% of the victims were young men who were post-pubescent boys. Who's kidding who?
You know, I want to focus on this just for a second. I want to drill down on this for just a moment.
Sure.
One of the reasons why we have to weed out the homosexuals is that homosexuality by its very nature is a perversion. It is a perversion of sexuality, and it is an obsession. Why does one identify as a homosexual? Because he feels naturally attracted to men. Okay? One identifies as a homosexual because he has a natural attraction to men. And that means that that attraction is obsessive. It's something that is going on in his mind. He can't stop thinking about it. It's constantly going through his head. Many times, these men who are homosexuals are engaging in masturbation, or they're looking at pornography, or both. Okay? They are doing something to continue to reinforce that perversion within their own soul.
For the payoff.
Right. And if they are identifying as a homosexual, it is an established given then that it is obsessive in their mind because they can't stop thinking about it. And they have to identify with it because it's always present on their mind. And because of that, they have a sexualization that is obsessive, and it becomes it's like Aquinas said, first in the mind, then in act.
Yes.
If you have something enter into your mind and it becomes a habitual thought, it will eventually find its way out in action. It's going to happen. A kid in school that fantasizes about the girl sitting next to him, if he ever gets her alone, he's eventually going to try to rape her. It's just the way it is. If you constantly fantasize and constantly interiorize certain habitual thoughts, it will come out in action. It is an inevitability.
Particularly with a society that not only allows it, but I would argue promotes it.
I agree.
You can't explain to me how we're seeing an increase in homosexual men, that this is somehow natural. I mean, it'd be tough to, you know what I mean by that? Like that somehow that this was a predilection that they were born with. No, this is right. This is learned behavior. In other words, reinforced learned behavior backed up by society. And the concept out of Rome is that by accepting this, that's good.
I know.
Where did that come from?
Right.
That's insane. And especially with, listen, Hitch, you and I read the data, we see what's going on with the amount of people that are quote unquote identifying as that particular sexuality, homosexual. How could the number be growing?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's got to be an explanation for that, and the explanation is, like you were saying, you're feeding this sort of, as I think you just mentioned, Aquinas said it starts in the mind, or someone actually wrote that.
Yeah, but Aquinas wrote it.
Yeah, start with a thought, and so when you're feeding that thought, and to your reference, the young girl in class and getting alone, if you're sort of feeding those sorts of fantasies that are violent or whatever, you're going to do that. Mm-hmm. You know? So anyway, Alex Jones was right about the frogs, just saying. Yes, he was.
Yes, he was. Yes.
Oh, where were we?
Okay, so let's
sorry, you done? God.
Yeah, why don't we move on to question 3? Question 3 is from Tony, and he asks 3 questions, actually. He says, how can we, the Anchor team, help you better to do your work, and how can we help with action to remedy some of the problems that you are surfacing? Okay, so this is actually a really good question, and it's let's go, Brandon. So this is a really good question, and quite honestly, I might leave that one up there for a little while.
Yeah, leave that up there. Way to go, Colin. Thank you very much, Colin.
Yeah. Because we do need help. We actually need volunteers for anybody who's willing to, especially as we're starting to dial up research onto the CCHD, because there are about 215 CCHD grantees, and going through that list takes a long time. I mean, you figure we spend a good 2 or 3 hours on every single one. Do the math. It takes a long time to go through all of them to figure out what we need. Now, obviously, if we don't find something fairly quickly, any leads fairly quickly, then we'll just move on to the next one. But once we find something, we'll spend about 2 or 3 hours digging into it and pulling as much information on it as we can. So if anybody would like to help us to research, that would be a huge help. Once we find something, once we put out a report, anything that you can do to get that report in front of as many people as possible is a huge help.
Yeah.
Put it in front of your pastor, put it in front of your bishop. If you have any way of reaching out to prominent individuals or people of influence, put it in front of their eyes. Going on social media like Twitter or Facebook and retweeting and reposting and sending it to these prominent individuals and encouraging them to comment on it or to report on it. That would be massive, because the more people we get talking about our reports, the greater the chance that we'll actually get or force a response from those sitting in their ivory towers. All right.
Well said.
Let's see. He also asks, what is the A-team looking to Lepanto to provide us? I think that's more a question for everybody else. So what are you all looking to provide us with? What things are we seeing that seem to be helping with the challenges being surfaced? What things are we seeing that seem to be helping with the challenges being surfaced? I'm not sure I understand that question, Jim.
What things are we seeing that seem to be helping with the challenges? Maybe he's asking for a catalyst. In other words, with challenges that are becoming apparent. What is actually helping that happen?
Oh, what's helping with the challenges?
Yeah, in other words, I think so.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not entirely sure how to answer it, because the challenges vary from report to report. They vary from investigation to investigation. It's every new one is its own animal.
Right. Hey, Hitch, you know what else too is when you think about it, Lepanto Institute does a great deal of work with social agencies that claim to be Catholic, right? And actually, it's a very important point. I think you said this last week. The reason it's such an important point is that many people today, due to poor catechesis and many myriad of other reasons, actually, to the clergy, think that is the purpose of the Catholic Church, and it's not. And so the point is salvation. The purpose of the church is salvation. But the actions of many, quote, Catholic charities, Catholic philanthropic organizations, are not the best. So one of the things that could really help us is just being aware and telling us, as simple as that.
You get a tip, or if you find out something that's going on in your parish, like, hey, my priest said something really heretical from the pulpit, pull out your phone, start recording him.
Yeah. And it's funny, Hitch, because every time I bring an idea to you, you have a process in your mind that you immediately reflexively go to.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, can we, it's kind of cool to watch, because it's really important because the reason is, either you hear something and then the next step is to verify it. Right. We try to really pay attention. Even the comments of Robert Royal on EWTN wasn't substantiated. We're very clear. It's really important. We don't want to give misinformation, but you go through this process. It's like, hey, it'd be great if we can get this guy to sit down with us, and then you go, and then any sort of, is there anybody? And then you would say, is there anybody in the office that we can get a hold of who can actually verify this, and all of those things. So the cool thing is, if you see anything, and you can sort of, lead us in that direction, that would be extremely helpful.
Yep. Excellent point. And the last thing Tony asks is, taking a look at all the research, input, and comments you've seen, what strikes you as the priority issues we need to confront? Say the top 3. I can say it in 3 words: repetition, repetition, repetition. The best and most effective way, or most effective thing that you can do with all of the research, the input, the comments, and all of it is just repeating the message, getting it out there, making sure that everything that we have reported on, that we are talking about, gets in front of as many eyes as possible, because that is the only way we are going to really awaken the people around us to the seriousness of the problems.
Great point.
I'll tell you, the last report that I put out there, I put it up on Twitter, the one on Caritas and the World Social Forum.
Yep.
And the next thing I know, I get inundated with all sorts of comments on my Twitter account, which never happens because for whatever reason, I have very few people ever comment on anything that I put on Twitter, which is why I rarely use it. But I get a whole bunch of people saying, stop spreading lies. You're lying. This is all calumny and blah, blah, blah. I'm sort of going, where is this coming from?
Yeah. And everything you wrote, you backed up everything in that.
Yep.
Chapter and verse. This is here. And by the way, here's a visual. And this is what we saw. And would you like to see the conference call they had with 16 people on those Zoom screens?
Right.
Right. That's really interesting to me.
So the thing that would help is to help put that out there. And if you've seen the reports, challenge people on them. Say, and just expect that people are going to say, this is calumny. These are lies. You don't know what you're talking about. And then say, did you read the report? Did you read the portion where it says X, Y, and Z? Because I don't know how you can interpret it any other way. And by the way, it came directly from the horse's mouth. Here's the video. No, they're not bots. These are all like Mark Shea aficionados. I know these people. They're nuts. Yes. They're nuts. And they never, ever respond to anything that I put out there anymore. But they responded to this one, which only tells me that I must have hit the sweet spot.
You hit the nerve.
We really did. We really did. And boy, the devil didn't like that one. So when suddenly people show up that never ever comment and they start talking about how I'm lying without, one person even said, because I said, did you read the report? And she said, I don't have to. The headline told me everything. And I said, really? The headline told you everything. So you're just going to call me a liar based on the headline without doing any of the work, any of the reading. And I challenged her several times to read the report and she refused to. So, it's got to be a knee-jerk visceral reaction from the demons. That's the only explanation I can come to on this. So anyway.
Great point. Oh, so but just to underline one thing Hitch said too, is we're really there are forces that don't want this message out. There are forces that stop our videos. So anything you can do to, like he was saying, to get it out there, but that's instrumental. I mean, that really is. That is absolutely key. It's crucial. So,
and I'm going to take this next one on, and then I'll give you the question from Maria.
Okay.
Question 4 comes from Joy, and she asks, "Do you have any information on Orant Charities? They started advertising in a parish bulletin, so I tried to research. I got one place that spoke about post-abortion care, but couldn't get back to it. The page seems to disappear." So I'm going to start with a statement about the post-abortion care programs going on with some of these charitable organizations. Most of the time, it's people who are treating women that go out and obtain illegal abortions. It doesn't mean that they're helping women to obtain abortions, but that after they get one, a lot of times because they're doing these illegally and they're hiding out, they start hemorrhaging and they're having all sorts of interior complications. And these clinics are offering post-abortive care in order to save these women's lives, quite frankly.
Oh, wow.
Now that happens, but at the same time, a lot of these organizations that get involved with that kind of thing are also underhandedly supporting legalized abortion so that women don't have to have post-abortion care. You see how it works? So I'm not going to condemn them based on that, but it does raise an eyebrow. However, I did find something right away on their website that got my attention. And they say this is under their own page where it's describing their programs. It says, "We don't just help our local community, they help us. Local leaders mobilize available resources for our projects. The community gathers quarry stones, sand, and bricks. People step in to provide labor. The government of Malawi supplies our health center with medicines. And this is what got me. They provide malaria tests, family planning supplies, HIV retroviral treatment. Okay. So by acknowledging that their health center is being supplied with family planning supplies, we know what that means. Okay. That means condoms. It means injectable contraception. It means contraceptive pills, all sorts of stuff. So I haven't spent any more time on this to try and dig down and find anything else, but that is a major red flag. And based on that, I would say not only don't give, but I would go to your pastor and say, you should, in fact, let me get the link here. I'll put it in the chat notes while, let me do this. Here is the link. I'm going to put it here in the chat box so that Joy can look this up and show it to her pastor. But anybody else, if you see Orant Charities, that's ORANT Charities, being advertised in your bulletins, then go to this page, pull up the portion that says family planning supplies, and say, hey, look, it seems very much like this organization is pushing contraception, and I think that you ought to take it out of the bulletin. So there you go.
There you go.
So I'm going to let you cover Maria's question.
Sure. This is a great question too. I thought about this one quite a bit, actually. Maria, thanks for the question. Is a schism inevitable in the church? What concerns me is that the Vatican is leading the schism with the appearance of supporting the doctrine, with the appearance of supporting the doctrine, but actually dismantling it with its actions. What are Catholics who are faithful to Christ to do? Create a Protestant Catholic Church and have our Archbishop Vigano post 95 Theses to the door of St. Peter's? Okay, great question. I got to tell you, I think you have to get schism off the table, Hitch. You follow, like in the sense of defense of the faith, defense of tradition and history in stubbornness and obstinacy and respect, but relentless.
Well, I think we have to start with the definition of schism.
Yeah.
Because schism is I refuse to be in the same church with you.
Right.
Okay. So schism is I don't want to be under the authority of someone who is improper authority. That's schism. That's one form of schism. So those who break away from the Pope, that's schism. But schism is also, I'm a Catholic, but I don't want, Merovingians to join the church.
What is that?
Because
I'm serious.
Yeah, it's an old dynasty in France.
Okay, then. Thank you.
But so if I were to say I'm Catholic, but the Merovingians shouldn't be Catholic, or I won't be in the same church with the Merovingians, at that point you're now guilty of schism and you're cut off. Schism also works in the other direction, because if somebody in the church says, I don't want to be in the church with TLM, traditional Latin Mass traditionalists, or I don't want there to be any traditionalists in the church, and we can think exactly of where that's coming from, that also is an act of schism.
Right.
And it's schism in the opposite direction. So the person who is the end of that I don't want to be in the church with is not in schism, but the schism exists on the other side. I think that we can almost safely say that the church is already in a state of schism. It's already here. You have so many Protestantized Catholics of the America Magazine, Commonweal, Sojourners, social justice-y types.
National distorter.
Yep. Who just want to say, you know what? We don't want the traditionalists. They're all wrong. They're a bunch of schismatics. If they accuse us of schism when we have not done that to them, they are guilty automatically of schism. So I think because of their words, we can very easily say we're already in a state of schism. It's already here. It's just a matter of whether it gets recognized.
Or formal.
Formal. Yeah.
Yes, I see your point there, actually. But to her question, right? She's
Mm-hmm.
asking, and I think a lot of it ties into that. It's just so obvious that, well, Pope is saying heretical things. Lots
Mm-hmm.
of people are running around saying heretical things. Cardinal Subic, Reverend James Martin, all of these things. So it's tough to reconcile it, and I think that because Catholic means universal, right?
Right.
So there should be that universal truth. It's clearly some challenges to that notion, and so, but I guess what I'm saying is, Hitch, the the thing is, in terms of how to move forward and how to really combat this, I think it's obstinate defense of the deposit of faith. Never back down.
Right.
And I think in terms of how she framed that question, because it's very confusing, especially I sometimes I hear very faithful Catholics just shake their head
Sure.
and move forward and go, well, we have to listen. No, we don't. The ultimate authority, correct me if I'm wrong, the Pope's job is defender of the deposit of faith and the
Mm-hmm.
history and tradition of the church, right? Which is
Right.
based on this, right? That's his primary position. That's his primary duty. And when that is challenged, we have a duty to fight that. That's our duty, right? We have
Yep.
to defend the deposit of faith because he will not do it. And things like, into her reference of the 95 Thesis, that can't happen because, as you point out, they left the faith,
Right.
right? Isn't that what you're saying?
So it's not even a matter of leaving the faith, because again, we have to. I want to put Joanne's comment up here. She says that heretics and apostates are in schism, and while that is true, because what they're doing is they are causing division. All the schism means is division. Okay,
Yes.
it means that there is a dividing line where they are no longer unified. Okay, they're no longer united. So one form, that's why I said one form of schism is a division from the Pope. Because if we are not unified under Peter, then we are in schism. Those who do not unite themselves to Peter have automatically caused schism. It's a division. Okay. Heretics cause schism because they are split on an opinion that is counter to the church's teachings, her proclaimed dogmas and doctrines. Apostates are in schism because they have turned away from the church and left. So they have divided.
Ah, right,
Okay.
right,
So
right.
they're in schism. Apostates and heretics are in schism. Those who do not, who refuse to be under the authority of the Pope, they are in schism. But you can have schism amongst groups of people within the church, even if it's not based on a matter of doctrine or teaching. It could be even, say, along racial lines. Okay. You could have and I'm only throwing this out there, but you could have a series of whites who say, I'm not going to be in union with the blacks. Or you could have a series of blacks saying, I'm not going to be in union with the whites. And automatically, the one who says that is in schism. So you have that. It's a lateral schism. It's not a top-down schism. It's a lateral schism. So
Oh,
that's what I'm talking about.
interesting point. That was explained well. Thank you.
So I hope that answered the question.
I think it did.
Okay.
I think so.
Uh,
And Maria, if you're there, jump on up and say something.
okay. All right. And I got one question that was thrown in just before we hopped on. This comes from Nancy, and I'm going to go ahead and throw these out here. She says, one principle: only Jesus can judge a priest. So she's asking. She said, maybe you can add some depth to an answer. Possibly these 2 points can be made to match up. What do you think? So she's asking about the principle: only Jesus can judge a priest. Well, quite honestly, only Jesus can judge any person. Okay, so we don't judge people. We judge actions, and we provide consequences to actions. That's why we have a court system. Okay, Somebody goes out and murders somebody and they're found guilty of murder. All they've done is said that this individual has committed this act and this is the punishment that fits this particular act. So somebody commits murder, they find the smoking gun, they've got the video evidence showing that, yeah, he committed murder, he had blood all over him, whatever. All that evidence leads into the conclusion that person committed murder. The penalty is death. So you've judged the action. You've not judged the person. If a priest does something such as molesting a child or preaching heresy from the pulpit, you're not judging him by saying, Father, what you said was heresy, or turning to your friends and saying, don't listen to what he said because what he said was heresy. That's not judging the priest. Furthermore, if the priest abuses a child and you turn him into the authorities and the authorities find him guilty and put him in prison, you've not judged the priest. You've judged his action. Okay. It's a very important point to make. So
Right.
when people say you can't judge priests, they're the same people that say, well, you're not supposed to judge anybody. And what they're really saying is you're not supposed to be judging actions, and they are wrong.
Right.
Okay. Now, number two, she says, there are standards of behavior. If a priest contravenes these, there should be some control. What if the bishop does nothing? Well, this would fall under our judgment of actions, and we can judge inaction as much as we can judge actions. And then 2b, she says there are laws. The state says they apply to all. This includes priests. And yes. So if the question really is it possible to judge priests in a civil court based upon their actions when they commit a crime? The answer is absolutely yes. In fact, in canon law prior to this century, if a priest was guilty of rape, of pederasty, of sodomitical acts, then that priest in many cases was turned over to the civil authority for judgment, because it wasn't the church at that time that was executing prisoners, but the state would. So the church herself was saying, no, you will now be judged by the state and you will have your sentence executed by the state. So yes, the answer is yes. Priests can be judged in a civil court just as well as anybody else. So anyway, that's
is that a wrap?
I think that is. That's our mailbag. If there is anything else, if I haven't answered somebody's question, I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to jump in here and let me know that I haven't answered it, or that I haven't adequately explained something, and I'll try and do it another way. But if the answer is adequate, if the things that I've said are adequate, then I think we will just go ahead and move on to closing the program.
Okie dokie.
So I'm not seeing any other questions or comments that I haven't answered anything. So we'll go ahead and close for this evening. I hope you guys enjoyed the way that we did this evening. It went really fast. I don't know about you, Jim, but
yeah,
it went really fast for me.
I really enjoyed it. I did. Great questions, guys. Really well thought out.
Yeah, really good questions. Really well thought out.
Yep.
Janice says that she has 6 questions that we didn't answer. When did you send them? I don't remember seeing.
When did they come, Janice? Hold on.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Okay. I'm not seeing any.
I don't have them.
I don't have any questions from her. Did you ask the questions in the chat box? Because it's possible I didn't see your question in the chat box because I'm not always looking at it while I'm talking.
Today.
No, I didn't get any questions from you. Who did you send them to? Did you send them to Jim or to me? Margaret J. Mary at gmail.com, she says. Let's check. Margaret J. Mary. There we go.
You have that? She said Jim.
Oh, she sent it to you. Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't have it. Margaret, let me try it. Margaret J. Mary.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I'm sorry we didn't get to your questions. However, if they're not timely, then what we'll do is we'll resubmit them, send them back to us, and we'll try very hard to incorporate them into next week's show. And if you guys like this format, we could do this some more. I mean, I actually really like doing this. So, yeah, go ahead and
we won't ignore you, Janice.
Yeah, we won't ignore you. Just resend it to us, and we'll do this again next week.
Yeah,
sound good to you guys? You like that? Because if you like just kind of this format, I'm happy to do it. Like, we can do it again. So if that's the case, then just let me know. And with that said, why don't we go ahead and wrap up?
Okay.
So, in nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancte Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostri. Amen.
Our Lady of Victory,
pray for us.
In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
Amen.
All right. God bless you all. I'm glad to see you all today, and I hope to see you all next week. Have a great weekend.
See you guys.